I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the pinch with the economy lately. We have not a war. I forget what they're calling it happening in the Middle East. We have 3 months in a row of declining job numbers. I know I have a lot of questions about it. And luckily, I knew the guy to turn to. And so today we're going to have a conversation about the economy with Bill Conerly. He's a senior contributor to Forbes. He's a PhD from Duke. In his latest article in Forbes, Uncertainty from Iran's War's Economic Risks, a guide for executives, just came out a few days or a week ago. So we're going to cover that too.
Welcome to the KeyHire Small Business Podcast, hosted by Corey Harlock, creator of KeyHire Solutions, where small business owners learn how to build stronger teams, simplify growth, and scale confidently. Got feedback or topic ideas? Send us a text. If you're listening on a handheld device, tap the link in the show notes to message the show. Subscribe or follow on your favorite platform, and follow KeyHire Solutions on social media for more insights and updates between episodes. To learn more about how KeyHire can help scale your business, visit keyhire.solutions. Connect with Corey on LinkedIn through the link in the show notes. Mention you're a listener, and he'll accept your request. And now, on with the show. Here's your host, Corey Harlock.
All right, Bill Conerly has been on the show before. He's an economist with a sense of humor, which is great. I've already given you his credentials, so Matt, let's bring Bill onto the show. Bill, how you doing?
I'm great. Good to be with you, Corey.
Yeah, apparently I'm reading at a grade 3 reading level today. Sorry about that. So in your article, you talk about I think you outlined 3 scenarios that we could be looking at based on timeline and we're not calling it a war. What are they calling it?
I don't know. I'm calling it a war.
It's a conflict or whatever, because if they go to war, they have to go get approval from
right.
the other branches of government, correct?
Right. Yeah. The Korean thing was a police action, I believe.
Was it? Yeah. So for all intents and purposes, we know it's not a war, but we'll refer to it as a war for the rest of the conversation. So walk us through kind of the main points of your latest article and how the war is impacting and could impact our economy.
Well, I was thinking of 2 categories of content there. One is, what does it mean for the economy, the war?
Right.
And I was talking scenarios like a quick resolution, primarily with the ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, a longer closure, and then a real long closure. And that's sort of the economics. And then I turn to, hey, what should a business person do? You're trying to run a organization. What does this mean for the actions that you should take today? So, and we can go into that either order, whichever you'd prefer.
Let's talk about what the economic outlook is based on the timeline of the war.
Okay. If the war were to end like tomorrow, and I guess this will not be released until sometime after
this is going to be. So this is going to be released on. You're going to be the first show in April.
But I'm not sure what we as a country and Iran as a country are going to do between now and the time this is out there. So
that's a good point. So the recording of this conversation is March 26th, and this will get released out on whatever it is. March 20. So the April 6th will be the release.
And occasionally, the president of the United States does something that surprises me that I was not expecting. And I'm just cautioning the viewers that I have some weakness in this regard. But if we have a reasonably prompt resolution of the conflict, I would revert to the forecast I had before the war started, which in quick summary, the economy is doing moderately well, not booming, but certainly not in recession. We have inflation being stubborn. And as a result, I was not expecting the Federal Reserve to take any action this year. That was a slightly minority opinion before the war started, but I expected flat short-term interest rates this year, with a decline in 2027. So if the war ends quickly, I think we go back to that scenario and we wipe our brow and say, well, that was a close call, but everything's okay.
Right.
The next possibility is that the war lingers for a while. And the issue there is the oil coming through the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's crude oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and oil is roughly a third of the world's energy consumption. So 20% of 33%. I'm not really good with numbers.
6.6. Phil.
I've got my abacus here.
Yeah.
And basically, the world would have to do with less energy. Right. And the most energy intensive products that are discretionary, maybe we use them, maybe we don't, those go away. Consumers around the world have to cut back on their use of energy a little bit and cut back on other discretionary purchases to afford the energy that they are continuing to use. And the businesses that make those discretionary products that consumers cut back on, they lay off people. It's a global recession, and it would impact the United States, because even though we are a net energy exporter, due to the fracking boom that we had last decade, if the oil producers had to sell it cheap here, they wouldn't sell it to us. They would put it on the global market. So American consumers have to pay the global price, or else it won't be available.
Right.
So the United States will be hit, maybe not quite as hard as the rest of the world on average. The energy producers here will have money in their pocket, so that's a little bit of an offset. And then I also talk about a longer term, a year or more, and that means that the recession has really gotten rolling. If it were to last like a decade, in 5 or 10 years, we'd have alternative sources of oil coming from outside the Persian Gulf. But it takes like 10 years in normal times to go from a geologist saying, hey, let's explore, to actually getting oil pumped out of the ground.
Okay.
So there's no short-term fix for this. And the other thing that concerns me and this is sort of the technical side, is when an oil well does not just tap into a big keg of oil, the oil is flowing through rock, and the whole thing is set up for a pace of oil pressure and pumping. And if you have to turn off the spigot because you don't have a place to put the oil, the well doesn't come back fully.
That's what I was reading too. A lot of these wells will just be abandoned potentially. So then when it does come back, now
Right.
You're still a little short because a lot of the supplies are.
Right. Some wells will be abandoned. Some will keep working, but at a diminished capacity. So they'll maybe only be producing 85% or something of what they used to present. So that would have long run implications, meaning that, if it goes long enough that a lot of wells are shut in, they call it rather than shut down, but shut in is the expression in the oil patch, then we will see higher oil prices than the otherwise path would be. So we're not going back to $60. It's not going to be huge, but it will be worse than it had been.
Right. I just filled up the other day. It cost me over $50. It's the first time in forever. I have a 16-gallon tank. It cost me over $50 to fill from I think my fuel light was on. I was like, wow, what's going on here?
Well, if you move to one of the states that takes energy transformation seriously, $50 would be really, really cheap.
Well, yeah, it's in Texas too. Like when I talk about filling up my car for $35, all my family back up in Canada are like, what? They're paying $150 Canadian. I mean, that's like $30 American, but whatever. Okay, so then thank you for that. That kind of outlines everything really nicely. I have I thought I saw a story on how they were considering building a pipeline from some of the wells near Hormuz across. What's on the other side? You have Iran on one side. Is it Saudi on the other side?
Yeah, right. Saudi Arabia, and Yemen is there.
Yeah, and they were
and across to the Red Sea.
That was kind of the article was saying, like, they could just get rid of this whole choke point by building a port on the other side.
Right.
At
right.
the Red Sea.
And fortunately, Saudi Arabia probably is not as limited by environmental permits required but still, and there is at least one pipeline now, and maybe two that exist, but we're talking, not a month or two. This is
thousands
a longer term solution and a better solution.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so then how does that trickle down into, we talked about economy, but more importantly, in just the time frame, and as we're talking now, this has been going on for like 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, and we're getting to the point where wells are being shut in because they don't have enough storage.
Crazy, but it feels longer than 4 or 5 weeks. So by the time this airs, it will be 6 to 7 weeks. If it's still going, that this is going.
Right.
And so I guess my point is, it just feels like you hear so much about it. It feels like it's been happening for months at this point, and it's barely just over a month.
Right. Which means the positive of this is a resolution today would have very few long run consequences.
Right. And so
another month, it starts getting worse.
So is it kind of every month it's like we get deeper and deeper into the hole? Obviously we do, but is that kind of how they would measure it?
Well, there are a couple of things. One is on the technical side, the well production, that is going to go down. But the world has been using reserves, and there are official strategic petroleum reserves, but also the companies have some oil in storage. Can they run down their inventory?
Right.
And they're thinking about, hey, are we going to need this inventory in 2 weeks? So if we got a resolution, everybody would say, okay, there are hundreds of ships, tankers loaded with oil, ready to leave the Persian Gulf as soon as the Strait of Hormuz is clear. And companies will say, we've got oil in storage, in Philadelphia, in Brazil, wherever. Let's use it all, knowing that there's more coming. So we will, at some point, not have those reserves, and we'll have to live on the current production rather than current production plus reserves.
Okay. So we look at that. So we go back a month, but the jobs reports for the last 3 months have been showing a very steady trend as well.
Yeah.
Right. There have been minus, I think, was it in February or January? It was plus 125, but then 125,000, but then it was adjusted down. I think the last jobs report was minus 95,000. So that's not a good trend. We already had that trend prior to this stuff happening.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean going forward?
Yeah. I do not have a sense that things have gotten worse in the last month or two.
Okay.
And one of the good sources of information we do get every week is initial claims for unemployment insurance, which have been used as a leading indicator of the economy. Somebody gets laid off, files a claim, and we are like in a layoff drought by that measure.
Really?
Very few. And the level is low by historical standards, but I like to look at the level divided by the number of employees in the country, because if you compare where we are now with where we were in 1970, we've got a lot more people. The population has grown, employment has grown. As a percentage of employment, it is like real close to all-time record lows, and it not getting any worse. Today's number, okay. So people say it's not a good time to be looking for a job, but very few layoffs actually happening right now. So I don't think when we finally get data for February and March, I don't think it's going to be weak at all.
I find that super interesting because there's definitely, well, we talked a couple shows back about the great hiring pause that's happening because people are kind of waiting to see.
Yeah.
And just looking back over the last year, there were thousands of government jobs that were canceled,
right? Which
put kind of some white collar people into the market. Now, the argument could be made, a lot of those people were gainfully employed already with other companies too. And the government gig was a side hustle for them. Then a touchy subject, but you bring in immigration and there's people that are leaving the country. And they're probably not white collar jobs, or most of them probably are not white collar jobs.
Right.
I'm just curious. And then, so I'm curious to know how that factors in, if it's like, because I know a lot of high end executive level people that have been unemployed for a while now and can't get a sniff at a job.
Right.
But I have a feeling there's a lot of entry level and lower level jobs where there might be openings and opportunities. And what are your thoughts on that? Or are you seeing different sectors or levels of jobs, C-suite versus entry level? Are you seeing any discrepancies in there?
Well, we economists have been looking at the employment data for years as one of our major tools. We think GDP, gross domestic product, is a little broader, but it comes out with a longer time lag and subject to more revisions. So we've been looking at employment and we're used to it growing, going up, up, up. But with the change in immigration is huge. We had, when President Obama was in his last year, net migration coming in minus people coming out, about 1 million people a year. It went down close to zero.
Coming in versus leaving?
Yeah. The net of coming in, about 1 million a year. Then in the last year of the Trump administration, which was 2020 in the pandemic, that went down close to zero.
Okay.
So 1 million to zero. The last year of the Biden administration, it was 3 million people.
Correct. Yeah.
And most of those, we think, are working age people. And if you think about the rest of the population in the United States, the working age people from early 20s through, let's say mid 60s is not growing. The boomers are aging out, and the aging out boomers about match the number of young people aging into their working years. So if we have to rely on native born Americans, there's no growth of available workers.
Right.
And I'm guessing that we're at zero net immigration now. There are some experts who study it in more detail than I do who say a little positive, others say a little bit negative.
I was going to say, has it ever been a negative, net negative before? Like more people leaving than coming in?
I don't believe so, but I'd have to actually double check. I'm wondering about Spanish flu or something like that.
Right. Yeah. But okay, we're not talking recent history.
Certainly not in our lifetimes.
Right.
Unless you're older than you look. But that means that without immigration, we cannot expect growth of total employment. And so I used to think, the employment has to grow by 1.5% to have a growing economy. Well, we can grow with productivity, but I need to adjust myself and say, hey, 0% employment change is just the best we can do with the labor force we have.
That phenomenon of the working class getting smaller as people are aging out, that is not exclusive to the U.S.
Right. It's a global phenomenon, though the timing and magnitude varies a little bit from country to country.
Because as I understand, China's really, because did they not have like a one-child policy? And
they did.
They're going to be feeling
right
their workforce shrink.
Absolutely. But even other countries, Japan and Europe, had the same baby boom after World War II, when prosperity came, and it came sooner or later. When prosperity came, people not only had kids, they had larger families.
Right.
In the U.S., the incidence of 4 children families was much greater after World War II than it had been before.
Okay. There's a lot of questions here, but I want to stay on topic, because I was going to say, like, because AI, is going to, there's a lot of talk about AI taking away a lot of entry-level jobs. One of the conversations I had, if you look at people in finance, say they're joining as an analyst at a bank or a PE firm or even a first-year lawyer, that's all work AI is going to soon be doing. That redlining of documents and doing comps and putting together studies and things like that. And it's going to be hard for people coming out with no experience to get experience. And all the companies are going to be saying, we need 2 years of experience because we already have our first year. And they're going to create a bit of a glut too. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, I have. And I don't know how it's going to play out. It was the less hiring of entry-level people. I think it makes sense. The study that got the most attention was Data Week. And, when I probed into the details, I'm like, yeah, they're probably right, but it's a small sample with some assumptions that, maybe are right, maybe not. Yeah. So I don't know, but it's plausible. But we do have hard evidence that when AI was used in call centers, that it really helped the beginners come up to speed, but it was of relatively little help to the experienced people.
Interesting.
And the experienced people could just do it because they had handled this kind of call so many times before.
Right. And I think that also has to do with the level 1, 2, 3. So the AI can handle the general level 1 type of complaint or question. Yeah. And then they're trained to say, hey, that's kind of above what I can help you with. Let me get you to a human who can actually problem solve with you here. And that kind of outlines the exact problem with private equity firms and banks and legal firms. We can train them to do that basic stuff today. They might be able to do a little more. But let's go back to your article a bit here. Yeah. You talk about oil shock, in which you talked about a bit, but how does that affect small businesses in particular, the oil shock, and what can they do to plan for that, and what companies are best positioned to deal with it? Maybe outline if we need to redefine oil shock again as well.
Yeah. When the average business owner does not need to know how much oil is produced in the world, but some of them need to know what the price of oil is.
Right.
So price is actually the economy's way of giving you a message wrapped in an incentive to use more, use less. So I think any business, small business, large business, should ask itself 2 questions. One is, how sensitive is the organization to a recession in general? And then secondly, how sensitive to oil? And for the first one, how sensitive, it's important to keep in mind that some industries, some sectors are very sensitive. Construction and manufacturing, particularly manufacturing of capital goods rather than regular staples. So if you're manufacturing factory equipment, that buying gets turned down very quickly in a recession. But if you're if you're selling disposable diapers, people keep using disposable diapers. I did a study on this once. This is a little sidelight, but I'm like, what do people do in recession with something like disposable diapers? And I saw the dollar spending on disposable diapers going down. And I'm thinking, oh, how sad. Little baby is ready for a diaper change, but the parents are trying to save money. Well, it turns out that when you probe into it, they were using as many diapers in recession as before, but they we're going to the cheap brands.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
The house brands rather than the name brands.
Right.
My kids are so old, I've forgotten what they are.
Fancy new gadgets and widgets built in,
So every business should think, how sensitive is my organization to a recession? Healthcare is sort of at the extreme of insensitive to recession. Construction and manufacturing of capital equipment and big ticket consumer goods at the extreme, very sensitive.
Right.
So that's the one thing. And then the second thing is how sensitive is the organization to oil prices. And that could be, maybe you're selling it, directly. You run gas stations with convenience stores. People are going to be cutting back on gasoline. But also remember that oil is a feedstock for fertilizer and many plastics and other products.
Even I saw an article, what's the correlation between gas prices and tire prices?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because tires
synthetic rubber is a petroleum product.
Right.
Yeah. But the important caveat here is, do the consumers have an alternative? So if you are producing a product that has a non-energy dependent alternative, then, hey, the consumers will shy away from the energy dependent product to the non-energy alternative. But if they've got to use something and they don't have a good alternative, well, they'll pay the price. They'll maybe try to do without a little bit, but the real shift will be to the to the less energy intensive alternative. So depending on your business, you should just rub your chin a little bit and say, hey, I have an energy dependent product. Do my customers have an alternative that's not energy?
And then sorry to cut you off, but another thing you talked about was how then, depending on your business, how can you flow through that price in your pricing?
Right. And, you will be able to raise your price. And trucking, I think, was the example I use. Truckers obviously use a lot of diesel, but products have to move by truck. Everything that you buy in a store, even if you buy it online, there's a truck involved in the delivery. So the truckers keep going and they just raise their price or add fees. And I looked at the history of trucking industry profits. They go up and they go down, but they do not go down just because energy costs are going up. So that's a good example of an industry where the customers don't have a good alternative.
So there's a potential for some temporary inflation. I like everything you're saying takes me back to COVID when we had the supply chain breakdowns. And so a lot of these businesses, it's a different problem, but it's going to be a similar solution short term potentially here to flow through those extra costs and say, hey, we got to keep our profit margin. So just temporarily until the prices come back down, we got to mark this up.
Yeah, I think so.
Bill, when is the last time we actually suffered a true blue recession?
Well, for about 2 months in the pandemic, 2020, that was recorded as a recession.
Okay.
Before that,
the great 60-day recession.
Yeah, exactly. And then some people went back to work, and also just a whole boatload. And boatload isn't my first term, but this is a family podcast. A whole boatload of stimulus was dumped into the economy. Before that, 2007, 2008.
So we're jumping almost 20 years removed from the last recession.
Exactly. And that last recession was almost exactly twice as bad as the average.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, anybody listening here who was running a business and remembers how bad 2007, 2008 was, I would expect the recession that might come to be only half as bad as 2007, 2008.
because there's a lot of people, 20 years, that's a lot of new business owners who have never really faced a potential like, whoa, we're in it here.
Right. Talk to the old guard and see what they did. So do you want to talk about what people should do?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, believe it or not. I was
okay, I'm anticipating it.
People, Bill? Yeah. We're all about advice here.
Do you remember The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the book from a while back? And they had wonderful advice, which was don't panic. For those of you who are listening to audio only, I've just shown the don't panic button on the screen there. And I think that's great advice. Don't panic. People are worried, and they're worried for a variety of reasons, including the immigration policy, the war, the tariffs. There's just a whole bunch of worry. But I think that it's not going to be a great depression. I think that, first of all, don't panic. But then I would do some contingency planning and say, gee, how bad is it going to be? And in some cases, you may be able to adjust your contingency plan for your specific industry. So I was speaking for car dealers, and new car sales in an average recession go down 12%. And it was 27% in the 2007, 2008 one. So that's sort of the twice as bad. And some of the people running, small businesses may have industry data about just how bad is an average recession. Now, I cannot guarantee that this will be an average recession, but that's sort of a benchmark. And the contingency plan I would recommend is just saying, hey, let's just pencil out a wild guess at what a recession would mean for our revenue. And if we're in the normal course of business doing less revenue, we cut some of the costs. We're not buying materials as much. And then run it through your financial statements and say, hey, can we still cover our obligatory payments? And then if you cannot, you start saying, gee, what can we do? And actually before this, a good thing to know is, what is our goal for the organization? Is it to just have a secure retirement 20 years from now? Is it to grow the business? Is it to pay dividends to the last generation that still own it but are not working? Figure out what your priorities are, and then revisit those priorities in the contingency plan and say, well, if we can't do everything that we had wanted to do with our business strategy, what gives? What can we be light on? And then start penciling it out. And I outlined this, if I can do a little bit of a plug, in a book called The Flexible Stance, Thriving in a Boom Bust Economy. And what I learned in researching that is that the contingency plan actually has two benefits. The first is that if you do it, you're less likely to get in a panic and do something stupid. You can develop a contingency plan in a relaxed environment, and not that, it's the don't panic thing.
Right.
But there's a second benefit. And as I was researching the book, I got on the phone to all of my friends who were bankers. And I'd worked in the banking industry and had a bunch of like loan officers and senior credit people. And I called them and I said, what's the difference between a company that goes bankrupt in a recession and a company that survives a recession? And I got an amazingly consistent set of answers. They were saying the company that responds quickly survives a recession. The company that drags their feet, dithers, puts it off, let's wait a quarter, see what next one is. In the corporate world, is let's form a task force, let's wait for another quarter of data. The companies that take prompt action are much more likely to survive. And if you thought through your contingency plan, then when you see that your sales are going down, you say, oh, we've got a plan for this. Let's dust it off, see if anything needs to be updated, and then implement the plan. Right. And that can pay big dividends if we go into recession. And with all this talk of recession, may I repeat that is not my base forecast, but it's a possibility that I think everybody needs to consider.
Right. And so when the one question I've been thinking of the whole time is, so if this resolves quickly, you think people will be like, whew, let's get back to business, which will be great. Mid-range kind of, I think you outlined like from immediate to about was it a year?
Yeah.
That's going to push us into a bit of a recession. Beyond a year, you're saying we got a problem.
A much bigger problem.
Yeah. So let's talk within that 1 year range. How long? I know you don't have a crystal ball, Bill, but how long would this stress last for a business owner? Oh, there it is. He does have a crystal ball.
I do have a crystal ball.
It's right beside your "Don't Panic" button.
Yeah, it's a little bit cloudy. I like props.
I know, and you probably I'm not the first person to say that to you, but what would the timeline of this challenge be for a small business owner? Rough. I mean, and you're going to give me a range. I know that, but
I think that if there's going to be an effect, probably, if you're really, really sensitive to like oil prices, maybe a little bit in April. But if you're sensitive to how much people are driving on the highway, a convenience store, maybe you'll see a little bit of a dip in the non-gasoline revenue in April, but I don't think it will be much. May and June is when we would see it more severely, that people have to cut back on their discretionary spending. And then it just gets worse and worse. What usually happens is when like gasoline prices go up is people have enough cushion that not much changes except they save less.
Okay.
And then they start saying, oh, I've got to do some adjusting, maybe drive less and starts, maybe not going through the Dutch Bros drive-through. I don't know if you have Dutch Bros where you are.
I think we do. I think they're happening down here, but
they just moved their headquarters from Oregon to Texas, I believe,
or maybe Arizona. They better be opened up down here. I don't.
Anyway, it's a drive-through coffee place. People will be doing.
Apparently, it's very good.
Yes,
I've heard great things.
Yeah, I've had it. People will be doing less of the let's sit and idle our engine to buy a $7 cup of coffee.
Right.
And they'll be saying, A, I don't want to idle my engine, and B, I don't want to spend $7 on a cup of coffee.
Correct.
So people would be cutting back on what is more expensive and also on what is not more expensive, but they can do without. But it takes a few months to adjust to that. Right. And then after 3 to 6 months, the companies that sell those discretionary products, their business is down. They start cutting back their staff. In some cases, it's attrition. In other cases, it's layoff. But then you see employment, and then there's a ripple effect, a multiplier effect, where that spreads through the whole economy.
So I think the question I should have asked is, once the conflict is resolved, then what is that? And I'm making myself sound smart because I thought of it as you were talking. I'm like, oh no, I think what I wanted to know was, but when the conflict's resolved, how do we come back to speed?
Yeah, good question. The first thing that's going to happen is people say, wow, it's over. They fill their gas tank, and unless they're living in Texas, it's still very expensive, but at least they know that the end is near. If you've got some pain, dislocated shoulder or some dental work or something like that, the pain is a lot easier to bear if you know it's about to go away.
Right.
But the pain is hard if you're thinking maybe it's going to get a whole ton worse.
Yes.
My dentist will vouch that I feel that way, that I tense up when there's a little bit of pain, not because of the little pain, but because it make it worse. Once we know it's going to get better, then people are more willing to spend, and we start to see the beginning. It'll still take a few months for people to fully adjust, gas prices to come down and the like, but I think it will be faster on the rebound than it was going into the downturn.
And our government over the last 6-8 years has shown themselves to be very forceful, or they want to make it last as little as possible. They're good at flooding the zone and pumping money and making jobs and doing all of the things they can do on their side. I don't know about this administration, but I mean, I think they don't want to go into the elections with a weak economy.
Well, that's certainly true. And the one thing Congress seems to agree on, Democrats and Republicans, is spending more money. Although, what we're seeing with TSA employees is that, they're not willing to let the other side have a victory. So, there's a challenge there. But as a general rule, let's forget current political bickering. As a general rule, you go into recession, there's a flood of fiscal stimulus, more government spending, maybe tax cuts, and there is usually monetary stimulus. The Federal Reserve cutting interest rates.
Okay.
But the challenge here is a recession that is a supply-driven recession, higher prices. The Fed says, gee, we have both stimulative and restrictive parts of this. And when they run their computer models, they keep coming up with, we should not change policy because of this. We should not change policy because prices go up along with tariffs. They should not change policy because prices go up because of a conflict that reduces the supply of oil. That's not going to help in the long run. It would accentuate the inflation without really solving the underlying problem here, which is that the world has to use less oil. Right. However, politics can intrude on the Federal Reserve decisions. Maybe there would be some interest rate cuts, but I think the current Fed is less willing to provide stimulus now than they were back in, say, 2007 and 2008.
Right. That's interesting. Well, Bill, I think we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. It's always great to have you coming on and giving us some clarity on what's going on out there in the world.
Clarity, if anybody got clarity, I don't think they were paying attention. I don't know what's going to go on.
Will you give us some definitions of some
possibilities and maybe some things to think about? I'm sorry?
It's options, right? It's good to know what your options are and what you should be looking for, and kind of some different markers and things like that along the way. So I appreciate you. Let us know if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how they can reach out and connect with you.
Yeah, my website is conerlyconsulting.com. There it is on the screen. You can Google Bill Conerly, and Google's pretty good about spelling. It knows how to spell better than the users do, so it'll fix your spelling. And I'd be happy to hear from people. I put out a monthly newsletter every month in graphical format. It's sort of like a comic book for economic statistics, 60 seconds of an update. And you can go access that through my website.
Very cool. And it's Conerly with one N. That's what you're referring to about.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Bill, thanks so much. Great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time.
Wonderful talking with you once again.
Yeah. Thank you. There you go. Bill Conerly, smart guy. Hopefully there's some value, and hopefully by the time this airs, this goddamn war is fini. But hope you got some good takeaways and some understanding of things you can be doing to kind of prepare yourself for the worst or the best. Thanks for tuning in. My name's Corey Harlock. I've been your host. And until next time, stop grinding, start growing.